Hello and welcome to another video. I was just, living my life and I felt the urge to spew some more about Desperate Housewives. So here we are, and I really hope you enjoy today's video. I'm going to be talking about season 1, episode 1, the pilot of Desperate Housewives, the hook, line and sinker. And yeah, just just one of the best pilots. Super engaging, super just crazy. The drama is there right from the beginning, and yeah, I'm just going to be talking about it, giving my commentary. Let's get into it. Okay, so first things first, we get introduced to Wisteria Lane. I think we have this kind of like panning view from above, and we get to see everyone, Gabrielle's jogging and people are driving into their driveways and talking and chatting, and it just looks like the most picturesque, beautiful, lovely, like idyllic scene ever. Like, you get the idea that it is very much, the epitome of the suburbs. It's the street you want to live on if you want to move to the suburbs and have a beautiful, lovely life. Or is it? So in this episode, as in pretty much all of the episodes bar a few, we are narrated through the episode through the lovely Mary Alice Young. She says that the street has just been, shaken by this senseless tragedy that's just happened, that being her literally killing herself the week prior. So she kind of speaks through her day, and she's like, usually there's nothing like exciting about my life, and she's like gone to go pick up her laundry and made her family like a normal lovely breakfast and everything's fine and dandy, up until she goes to her like mailbox. She opens up, some letters. She then goes into her closet in the hallway, brings down a shoebox, gets a gun out of it, and shoots herself in the head. And that is the mystery of season 1. That is kind of like us being thrown and planted right in it. This is just something that I personally know because I've watched the episode a gazillion times and like dissected everything. But when she opens the closet to retrieve the things, the gun, and kill herself, everything in that closet is beige, like everything. I just find it hilarious. Like, they really tried to show us that she was like the most boring, basic, normal, standard housewife ever, and then boom, her life kind of, just changes, and she shoots herself. And therein lies the big mystery of season 1. Why did Mary Alice do this? Her family seemed so happy, she seemed happy, not even her closest friends on the lane can tell why she did this, but we'll get into that in a second. So we then get introduced to to Mrs. Huber, who is the neighborhood busybody, and I'm not gonna lie, she was criminally insane, but the show was so much better for having her. Like, she was so funny. So she's the neighborhood busybody, right? She's at home, she hears the gunshot, she's like, oh my gosh, I need a reason to go over there. So she takes this blender which says it's Mary Alice's, and Mary Alice, when she's narrating, tells us that Martha Huber borrowed this blender from her 6 months prior. So she's like, oh, I want to see like why there's a gunshot. So she takes the blender, runs over to the house, looks through the window and sees Mary Alice on the floor, like blood everywhere, screams, runs back to her house, calls the ambulance. It's like, oh my gosh, you need to call an ambulance, call one right now. Then the narration says, for a moment, Mrs. Huber stood motionless in her kitchen, grief-stricken by this senseless tragedy. Then it goes, but only for a moment, and Mrs. Huber rips off the label from the blender and puts it back in her closet, and is like, yep, guess this is mine now. You just seen your neighbor, like, and you and I feel like that is like, in that scene is like one of the epitomes of why I love Desperate Housewives, because it's just like you've got this massive tragedy, this massive like crazy horrible thing that's just happened, and you just throw the humor in there and it works. Like, yeah, it's just ridiculous. So Mrs. Huber, I'm not gonna lie, like, we hate her for what she, all that she causes later on in all the seasons, but also I love her because absolutely ridiculous behavior. The next thing that happens is we kind of skip a few days. Mary Alice has her funeral, and then we're shown to the day that she's having her wake. So everyone on the neighborhood is coming over to her house, and this is kind of used as the opportunity to really get an introduction into all of the different housewives and the kind of struggles that each of them have individually. So I believe we start off with Lynette, and Lynette brings to the wake fried chicken, and Mary, as in the narration, says Lynette used to have a really good recipe for family chicken, but now she absolutely does not have the time to cook it. And then, yeah, we learn a bit more about Lynette, and she's a stay-at-home mom. She has 4 kids, super young. Tom is always working, so it feels like she's always home with the kids. She's really struggling. They're quite badly behaved. Literally at the wake, they jump into Mary Alice's pool and start swimming and having a fun time, and everyone else is like, we're at a wake. So yeah, that's kind of like Lynette's current situation and the current situation that she's in. She's really struggling with her kids. Tom is kind of, you know, the one who, it was even his idea in the first place for her to be a stay-at-home mom. She used to be the career woman, the power woman, and now the roles have really switched. So he is the one making all the money and she is at home domestically, but she's struggling with it. She's not really enjoying it. Then we get introduced to Gabrielle Solis. Gabrielle is gorgeous, you know, she has lots of money. She's in a big house with her husband. She used to be a model and is used to having lots and lots of attention and getting anything she wants. And she has everything she wants apart from her husband's time and attention. She has her husband's money. Her husband will buy her anything she wants, but he is not spending time with her. He is, you know, a career person. She's home alone a lot and she doesn't want to be. She wants, you know, his time, his attention, and the money, but it feels like she can't have all 3 at the moment. She's got the money but not the time and not his attention. Another thing that I just so happen to know, because I've watched it so many times and realized it, is that they do this really cringy thing, and in the first like episode, or maybe first 2 episodes, every time Gabrielle comes on, they play this like Hispanic sounding music for her, and I'm just like, oh, I don't know. It just feels a bit like, ow. Anyway, that could just be me. I don't know, maybe everyone else loves it, but I was just like, Bree. Bree is probably, I think Bree might be my favorite housewife. So even from season 1, I feel like fiercely defensive of her. She is a domestic powerhouse. Like, she cooks, she cleans, she does her own upholstery, she does her own gardening. She is just killing it domestically, okay? Like, she is the Martha Stewart or more of Wisteria Lane. And everyone is like, she's amazing, she's this, she's that. Everyone can rely on her to make the perfect brownies and scones and whatever. Everyone apart from her own family. Her own family kind of look at her like, every single time she, you know, does something like this. So she brings to the wake 2 baskets of goodies for Zach, who is Mary Alice's son, and Paul Young, who's Mary Alice's husband. The other basket is also to display at the wake. And iconically, she gives them the treats, and she's, you know, being sympathetic towards them, and I'm really sorry that you're having to go through this, you know, obviously Mary Alice just killed herself. And then she's about to hand them over, and she goes, of course I will need the baskets back. I'm sorry, how can you not love her? Like, she's like, yeah, I'm sorry and everything, but I'm gonna need these baskets back, okay, so I can continue giving my baked goodness to the rest of the street in future occasions. And I just love her. She's just the best, okay? Anyway, and lastly, we get introduced to Susan Meyer. Susan is a recent divorcee. She has recently divorced her husband Carl, who cheated on her with his secretary. She is the single mother now to a kind of teenager named Julie, and we learn very quickly that Julie really is like almost the mother in this situation, and Susan is the ditzy, airy fairy one who's kind of all over the place, doesn't really know where they're going or what they're doing. So it's a very like upside down kind of relationship, and Susan is an acquired taste, and I don't like her. She like, yeah, we'll get into that. So at the wake, the neighbors, the 4 women kind of gather and are sitting down around the table, and it cuts into a flashback scene of when Susan was telling the ladies about Carl being unfaithful towards her, and Mary Alice was giving this advice and said, you know, when we're going through tough times, it's really about showing how strong we can be, and so on and so forth. And it then flashbacks to the present, and the ladies are around, and they're saying, you know, how could she have done this? She seemed so happy. Her life was like our life. Like, what could have been so wrong that she killed herself? She never opened up to any of them about it. And the whole time, Paul Young, who's, as I said, Mary Alice's husband, is eavesdropping on their conversation and is, you know, looking very, very suspicious. So although we see Mary Alice actually kill herself, we don't know the reason why, and we start to believe, okay, could it have something to do with Paul Young, her husband, who is being just a little bit weird, a bit cold after Mary Alice's death. So also at the wake, Susan runs into Mike Delfino, and he is this handsome, you know, bachelor who's just moved onto the street. He's a plumber, he's single, and he seems to be interested in Susan as well at the wake. Susan brings to the wake some mac and cheese, and Mike ends up tasting some, even though Susan has just advised him not to because she also knows that she can't cook. And he goes, it tastes like it's burnt and undercooked at the same time. Which I just think is hilarious. Later on, Julie encourages Susan to go and ask Mike out on a date because she doesn't know the last time that her mum has had sex, and she says that to her mum. And she also says that her dad has been laughing with his new girlfriend about, you know, how long it's been since Susan has had anyone, basically. You know, that seems to embolden Susan, and she goes over there to Mike's with a plant and, you know, has this idea of, you know, I guess making herself known to him and potentially asking him out on a date. And as she gets there, guess who also arrives? The Edie Britt, who Mary Alice is like, she is a slut. Like, full on just calls her a slut. It's just like, oh, okay. I mean, personally, what do I think of Edie? I think Edie's here having a good time, okay? So, you know, let's take from that what you will. Edie comes over, she's wearing a really low cut top, and she's, you know, brought this dish of food over and is also introducing herself to Mike at the same time. So we get this kind of view from the audience, just knowing that this is going to be, you know, a throwdown basically for who's going to get the new eligible bachelor who's just come into town. And the scene ends with Edie saying, "Oh, Mike, would you mind coming over later and looking at my pipes?" And it's just like, okay, looks like Edie has won this one. So that's where that scene leaves us. We then skip back to Gabrielle and Carlos, who are at home having a heated discussion about whether Gabrielle is going to this party that she doesn't want to go to. And she doesn't want to go to it because the last time she was there, the person who was throwing the party was feeling her up. And Carlos is like, well, yeah, I made money doing business with him, so be felt up. Like, it is what it is. So we learn really that Carlos sees Gabrielle as like a possession and doesn't value her, isn't that keen on her feelings or anything like that. He's here to make money, and she is kind of just an asset to him. They kind of take the conversation and the argument outside, and their gardener, whose name is John Rowland, is out doing the hedges, and I think as he, you know, looks up, he ends up cutting his finger and there's a little bit of blood coming out. So Gabrielle goes to him, yeah, we have plasters in the kitchen. He goes inside the house, and then Carlos basically wins the argument and agrees that, and it is agreed that Gabrielle will go to this party. So Carlos goes off to work and Gabrielle goes back inside and basically starts kissing John Rowland. Kissing the life out of John Rowland. It becomes clear that this is not the first time that they have done it. Yeah, we learn that Gabrielle is having an affair with her teenage gardener. We then move over to the Vandy Camps. We're back with the Vandy Camps and it's dinner time, and Bree has made, you know, this amazing cuisine, this lovely meal for everyone, and it's taken her hours to prepare, and the kids are kind of just like, yeah, it's okay. And she's like, what do you mean it's okay? I spent hours making this. Like, can someone show a little bit of appreciation? Like, what's going on? And I understand that. Like, you know, when you cook for someone or you do something special for someone and they're kind of just like, yeah, well, and you're just like, sorry. No, I've been home all day. We're going to need some smiles. I'm going to need some comments. I'm going to need some compliments, okay? Like, it's okay. And they all kind of just start complaining, like, oh, why can't you make dinner? Why do you always have to make cuisine? Like, so-and-so's mum makes this food, and they're all happy. And she's like, what's going on with you? She's like to Andrew, basically like, are you doing drugs because you've been crazy for the last, like, how many weeks? She says to Rex, like, could you step in? Could you say something? And he says, could you pass the salt? And it's just like, Bree, I will marry you because your family clearly don't appreciate you, and I will. So next scene, Lynette is in the supermarket and she ends up running into an old colleague. And as she's run into this colleague, her two eldest sons go off with the shopping trolley, and she doesn't notice. And the colleague is like this professional corporate woman, and they know each other from back when that was, you know, Lynette's world. And she asks Lynette, like, you know, how are you finding domestic life? Like, is it the best thing you've ever done? Lynette really struggles here. Like, she really wants to, you know, say to someone like, no, this sucks, it's the hardest thing I've ever done and it's terrible, but she doesn't. She ends up lying and saying, yeah, it's the best job I've ever had. And as she says those words, the camera pans over to her kids who have just bumped into this old lady and knocked her clean onto the floor. Oh yeah. So the next scene, we're back with Susan. Susan is, you know, just about to go over to Mike's and ask him out on a date. And as she goes up to the door and is, you know, stumbling and fumbling and trying to find the right words, Edie also appears at the door behind Mike. So Edie was in Mike's house already, and that completely throws Susan off. And then she kind of makes up this thing of like, oh, I only came over here because you said you're a plumber and I have a clog. And then Mike's like, yeah, no worries, I'll be over in literally 2 minutes. And Susan's like, crap, because obviously she doesn't have a clog. She was going over there to go and be like, hey girl. So she runs back home and is throwing like hair and cooking oil and, you know, olives down her sink, trying to actually give it a clog, and nothing's working. And it just so happens that her lovely daughter Julie was, you know, trying to make this class project, and she was using popsicle sticks to create like a little horse figurine. And they end up having to use those sticks that Julie was using for her horse, taking it apart and putting it in the sink so that Susan doesn't seem like a big fat liar when Mike comes over. And then cuts to Mike, you know, taking them taking the sticks out of the pipe, the clogged pipe, and being like, oh, looks like this is what the issue is. And Susan goes, oh yeah, you know, I always tell Julie not to play in the kitchen. Oh, kids, you know. And it's just like, Julie's just like, meanwhile, Julie is basically the adult in this relationship. Julie is basically the mother, and Susan, in fact, is the kid. So it's just another funny, like, ironic scene. Next scene is Bree and the Vanderkamps. They're at a restaurant. They're at a restaurant that doesn't exactly scream Bree Vanderkamp. So it seems like after last night's dinner, they've been, you know, asked to kind of loosen it up a bit and do something a bit more freeing. And Bree's like, okay, fine, we'll do this, I guess. She's not happy about it, but whatever. So the kids go off to the arcade after they've ordered, and Rex goes, I want a divorce. Meanwhile, they're in the middle of a restaurant. Okay, the kids have only just gone off. They're in the middle of a restaurant, and he just says it deadpan, like not even, like nothing surrounding it. And I'm just like, where did you guys find these terrible men? And the reason why Rex is like, I want a divorce is he says he doesn't want to live in this detergent commercial anymore. Why do you have to do Brie like that? Why? And it's interesting because I feel like I understand both people's perspectives. I love Brie, as I said. I feel like I will ride for her till dawn. But I do understand the kind of ness of their life, and like just feeling like you can't step out of, like, you can't do anything that's gonna, you know, everything's just too perfect and it feels too orchestrated. And I think that is Rex's issue. That is why he's like, I want a divorce. Now, having said that, saying that in the middle of the restaurant is a terrible way to do it. And so next thing that happens is Brie goes off to go and get Rex a salad, and as she does that, Martha Huber, of course, she is also there as well, ends up being there and distracting Brie with a little bit of conversation about whilst she's creating the salad. So she brings the salad back to Rex's table, and he starts eating it and starts to choke and have an allergic reaction to it. And it turns out that Brie accidentally put onions in the salad when she was distracted. So yeah, payback, I guess. So next scene is the middle of the night, and Zach Young has just woken up to a sound that he remembers from his past at some point. He goes outside to see what it is, and it turns out that Zach Young, his father, has drained the pool entirely, and it's inside the pool with, you know, a concrete pick or whatever, and is literally hacking away at the concrete and trying to get out something underneath. Now, we don't ever learn at this point what he's trying to get at, but it is a very suspicious thing to be doing when your wife has just killed herself. No one knows why. And again, he's kind of just got this weird aura about him, but we don't ever get any more information than that at this point. Next scene. Tom has just come back from his business trip, which is probably perfect because Lynette feels like she was just about to like run away from those kids or whatever. He comes back and after a couple minutes, him and Lynette are having sex. And she tells him, oh, by the way, the doctor has taken me off the pill because it was making me feel really bloated and really rubbish, so you're going to have to put on a condom. And he's just like in the act, he's in the moment, goes, condom, let's risk it. She looks at him and goes, clean. It's not funny because it's actually terrible, but clean punches him in the face, like, and then they just skip to another scene. But from that, you can gather that like she's done with the children, with the unplanned children. She's like, I'm at my limit. What do you mean let's risk it? Look what I'm dealing with already, and now you want to add to my plate, or potentially add to my plate. You want to risk it? I'm not risking anything. So it looks like that romantic moment is over for them. Next scene, Bree and Rex are in the hospital. You know, he's had to come to the hospital because of his allergic reaction. And he says, you really tried to poison me. And she says, yeah, I feel really bad about that. I mean, and in this scene, you know, he gives Bree a bit more about why he wants this divorce, because obviously he said it and it was just so cutthroat the previous time. And he says, I can't live and breathe in this perfect life anymore. I just want to, you know, come out of it, and that's why I want a divorce. And we know my feelings. I feel for him, I understand, but I'm 9 times out of 10 I'm gonna side with Bree. Sorry. It's now the evening, and Gabrielle and Carlos are at this fancy party that they had both agreed to go to earlier on in the episode. Gabrielle has this gorgeous gown on, her hair's all pinned up, and Carlos is wearing a suit. They get to the just before they leave for the party. Carlos walks, you know, on the way to their car, he walks onto the grass in their front lawn, and he's like, this hasn't been mowed. And Gabrielle's like, what are you talking about? It has been mowed. John Roden was here today. Like, it has been mowed. It hasn't been mowed. And Carlos just goes, you know what, forget it. Like, I'm not hiring some kid to do our gardening anymore. We're getting a proper gardener. I'm gonna fire him tomorrow. So they get to the party, and Gabrielle pays off a you know, bar staff basically pays off a waiter to make sure that Carlos has a drink in his hand the entire night. Once that's done, she leaves the party, gets home, pulls out the lawnmower, and literally mows the lawn in the dead of night in her gorgeous ball gown. Okay, so that's how much her affair means to her at this stage. She's willing to risk all of her neighbors see her mow her lawn in her gorgeous gown and question what's she doing, just so she can keep her little thing on the side, her teenage thing on the side, John Roland. She gets back to the party, and you know, she's like, whew, she sees Carlos. Carlos doesn't seem to suspect a thing. He's gotten a bit more drunk, obviously, and you know, she kind of is like, whew, and does this, and there's a leaf in her hair, and she goes, brushes out of her hair and just continues. How can you not love her? How can you not love her? She's yeah, iconic. Susan then learns from Martha Huber that Edie is planning to entertain into the wee hours of the night, and of course her first thought is, oh my god, it's Mike. Like, how can this be happening? So, like no sane person would, she decides to take herself from her house to Edie's house during said encounter. So she walks into the living room, and you can hear, like, you know, jazz music playing. You can see all the candles, you can see clothes thrown across the floor. And she not only goes there and finds herself in that situation, thinking that it is the person that she has a crush on, Mike, she then decides to take a seat on Edie's sofa and take a bite of whatever snack they were, you know, rendezvousing each other with. Then, you know, in her sadness, I think she throws something behind her. And of course, because it's Susan, it all catches alight. There's candles everywhere, and it all begins to, you know, go on fire. And therefore, Susan literally sets Edie's house on fire whilst she's in it, whilst Edie's in it, and whilst said mystery man is also in it. It then cuts to a scene with the fire brigade has been called. They're, you know, hosing down the house. Edie's like, oh my gosh, like, and then, you know, people are whispering and saying, oh, she was entertaining at that time. She barely had any clothes on. Oh, and someone goes, oh, what happened to the guy? And someone says, oh, he had to be taken to the hospital because he had smoke inhalation. And Susan's like, oh, and everyone's like, oh, Susan, why do you, like, what's wrong? Why do you look so guilty? Well, because she was the one who set the damn house on fire. Anyway, so then, a couple seconds later, in walks Mike, as in from the street, not from the ambulance. He was at the movies or doing something else at this time. So Susan's like, "Oh my gosh, Mike, you're okay," and he's just like, "I mean, yeah." So she did all of that for no reason. Edie's house is ruined, all of her clothes gone, all of her stuff gone. She's actually given smoke inhalation to some poor other stranger who Edie happened to be entertaining, but it's all okay because, you know, at least Mike is still here. How can you like her? How can you like her? Oh. Later on in the evening, it cuts to another scene, and Mike is, you know, on the phone with someone. We don't know who it is, and he says, "I'm getting closer. I'm getting closer to," and we don't know what getting closer is. But obviously, him being the newest person that's just moved on to the lane, he's single. He's here. He has no one else around him. He then starts to think, okay, could he have something to do with everything that's going on with Mary Alice? And in that scene, also, I think they pan onto him and he has a gun. The closing scene for season 1, episode 1, Desperate Housewives. The ladies have just finished clearing out Mary Alice's closet, and as they're going through the final box of her things, Gabrielle goes, you know, she always told me she was a size 6. They then open up the letter that Mary Alice actually received on the day that she died. And this is the first time that we as the audience actually get to see what the writing says. And the writing says, "I know what you did. It makes me sick. I'm going to tell." So the mystery of season 1 with that final line is well and truly planted. With that letter, we understand that there's a real complexity to Mary Alice's death. It wasn't just because she was bored or she was, you know, stressed out. There is a reason why this happened. It looks like she's being threatened or blackmailed or both. And that wraps season 1, episode 1, guys. Honestly, one of the best pilots I think that there is. It's got the perfect blend of like drama, mystery, comedy. I've probably watched this episode possibly like up to 20 times now, just because of the amount of times I've restarted Desperate Housewives, and it brings me genuine comfort. I still laugh out loud at some of the lines, some of the comments. It's just pure genius. Like, they just honestly don't make TV as good as this anymore. Yeah, I really hope you've enjoyed this video. I know I have just enjoyed speaking about one of the best shows of all time. If you've gotten this far, write in the comments below your most iconic line of season 1, episode 1. I'll put mine here. And yeah, thank you for watching. Bye.